Hoardganize Podcast. I am your host, professional organizer Rachel Seavey, and it's time to get organized. Hey, collectors! Today we are talking about clutter, dust, and COVID. We're talking about how clutter affects our immune systems. For the most part, with COVID going on, a lot of us are stuck at home with our stuff. I mean, laundry piles have literally taken on a pulse. So we're all kind of stuck facing our stuff, myself included. And I know a lot of you right now are really in decluttering mode. You're tired of seeing your stuff every day. And I totally understand. You can't escape the cluttered reality of your home right now. And chances are, if you have a lot of clutter, you're going to have a lot of dust. And almost every home that I go into is dusty. I see different textures of dust. I've seen dust that's accumulated with pet hair and it's kind of like woven like dryer sheets. I've seen dust on top of 200 Beanie Babies that's been there for decades. And I find it just really interesting, all the different textures and appearances of dust. I've seen dust that's fine, like baby powder, or almost like someone was sanding. So I actually do find this topic very interesting. I am not an expert on dust, although I feel like it. I'm surrounded by dust all the time. We've been wearing our N95 masks long before the pandemic at collectorcare, and for the most part, it's for dust. So I read on the internet that we all know that people want to get rid of household dust, but the first vacuum cleaner was actually invented in 1901, and it was drawn by horse, and you had to park it outside, and it ran on gasoline. So that's how long that we've been trying to get rid of household dust. It's nothing new. And, many people claim they're allergic to dust, but in many cases, what they're actually having is an allergic reaction to the dust mites that live on the dust. The mites eat the dead skin, and it's their dead bodies, their little carcasses, and their fecal matter that people are actually allergic to. And up to 500 dust mites can survive on just 1 gram of dust. And while that doesn't sound like very much, the third of an ounce, the average home in the United States collects, get this, 40 pounds. This is an average home, 40 pounds of dust a year. This is not a cluttered home. This is just an average home. And depending on how small the particle is, dust is actually capable of staying suspended in the air for up to 5 days. So I'm going to give you some really good tips in just a little while on how to reduce dust safely in your home. And, whether you're a clean person or a messy person, dust happens. I totally think it should be a bumper sticker. I even get dust. I have to dust my house. And it's just a fact of life. It's a part of life. I mean, technically, we all become dust in the end, right? So Wikipedia explains dust mites like this. Stay with me. I hope I'm not grossing you out. I'm just trying to encourage you to declutter and dust a little bit. So house mites are present indoors wherever humans live. And positive test results for allergies and asthma are very common with people that have dusty homes. And asthma is definitely something that doesn't mix well with the coronavirus. House mites, due to their very small size and translucent bodies, they're barely visible to the naked eye, and they feed on skin flakes from humans, animals, and some mold. The average lifespan of a dust mite is 10 to 19 days, but a mated female house mite can live up to 70 days, and they lay about 100 eggs in the last 5 weeks of their life. So in a 10-week lifespan, a house dust mite will produce approximately 2,000 fecal particles. So it's their little carcasses and their fecal particles that are making people sick with respiratory issues, with asthma. And right now, especially during the pandemic, that's not good. And if I haven't grossed you out or freaked you out yet about dust, and like I said, I'll be giving tips in just a moment. Why don't you try Googling a photo of a dust mite? They are absolutely hideous. And if you know if you're surrounded by a lot of dust, it's really no surprise to me, and probably not to you either, that you've got respiratory and breathing problems. I know a lot of you have those CPAP or those breathing machines right next to your beds. A lot of the people I work for have CPAP machines, and a lot of the times the CPAP machine and the CPAP uh, tools are covered in dust as well. So make sure that you clean that. And that's not part of my tips going forward. It's just something that I see often. So the American Lung Association, let's move right along, say that the dust mite allergy symptoms include the following. And it's going to sound a little familiar: sneezing, coughing, runny nose, itchy, watery eyes, congestion, facial pressure and pain. I mean, this all sounds to me like it could be symptoms of the coronavirus. And these are just these nasty little dust mites giving you allergies. And these are the same kind of symptoms. So they're similar. And you might freak out. You might think, oh my gosh, did I get the virus? Was I exposed, just from having your allergies from the dust mites? So that's one issue. Another issue would be that you're now, touching your nose more, you're wiping your eyes more, you're coughing more because you have these allergies, and therefore you're more susceptible. You're touching more things, and you're touching your nose, and you could be more likely to get the coronavirus if you're suffering from these dust mite allergies and your hands are dirty. You could totally inadvertently infect yourself with a virus. People that are asymptomatic don't even know they have it. So if you've got your allergies going on and it's causing you to touch your face, no bueno, not right now. So here are my 5 tips on reducing the dust in your home. Tip number 1 is you're going to want to wash your bedding and your laundry often. Dust mites drown in water. I know some of you struggle with it. Just do one load at a time. You know my motto. You just take a little bit, break it down into bite-sized pieces. Number 2, you're going to want to vacuum as often as you can, because it removes the dust mites, and everything else, the hair, the debris, the whatever's on the floor. And when you are done vacuuming, I suggest to immediately empty out your vacuum into a plastic garbage bag, tie it really tight, and then throw it outside. That way those little buggers don't come back in. And if you don't have enough space for a full-on vacuum, because maybe you just have pathways in your home or there just isn't enough room, then I suggest just getting a dust buster and using that on the carpet or using that on top of the clutter and just trying to remove some of that dust as best as you can. Tip number 3 is to use disposable dusters like Swiffers, and Pledge makes something like that. And you want to immediately dispose of those, kind of like you did your garbage debris, because you're collecting the little carcasses and the fecal matter and the dust mites and everything along with your little Swiffer. And feather dusters, I'm not a huge fan of feather dusters. They tend to agitate the dust, and it seems to just land everywhere else. Like you just kind of put it up into the air, and like I said earlier, that the airborne particles can stay for up to 5 days. So I'm not a big fan of feather dusters. I know some people that swear by them. I get it. To each their own. I'm not even a big fan of the Swiffers because they remove the dust by trapping it with sticky chemicals. What I personally like to do is just wet with water one of those microfiber cloths. Those are really good at grabbing the dust, so you're not just spreading it from one area to another. You're actually, grabbing and grasping at that dust, and then you wash it immediately, and the water will kill the dust mites. So that's how I like to roll. I'm not a big chemical fan. And I'm not a big fan of using a bunch of product on wood or on electronics and stuff. So water, just a little bit damp, microfiber, you should be good to go. Obviously, I have to include this. Tip number 4, declutter. Decluttering your home. The less stuff you have, the less dust will collect. The easier it is for you to actually dust. If you have tons of stuff everywhere, then you're going to have to dust probably each individual item, especially if it's been like that. And it's kind of a pain. I've done it. I do that every day. I don't like putting things back dusty. And so you're going to want to take the time and declutter your home as much as you can. You don't have to do the entire home. I go on and on about that in other episodes, but declutter your home so that you can really get to all that dust, get to those hard to reach places that are dusty and have cobwebs, and I've seen it all. So decluttering your home, decluttering your life is definitely number 4. You got to get rid of that dust, and in turn, you will feel better. Tip number 5, and this is something that a lot of people forget, is to dust your fans. Dust your ceiling fans, your air vents, your vent fans, and these are areas that you do want to dust regularly. I just switched out my air filter in my system. I don't know what it's called, but where you switch out the filter, it's over at Home Depot. The one I had was gross. We've had the fires and the ash, and I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't breathing in a bunch of gross stuff every time I turn on the AC over here. So you're going to want to dust your ceiling fan. If I have a ceiling fan over my bed, and what I do is I put a towel on top of my bed, and then I, wipe the top of the fan and underneath the fan and the whole unit itself with a wet microfiber cloth, and the towel below so that none of the dust gets into my bed. So that's what I do. But you do want to dust your fans. And please note with any of these tips, if you're elderly or immobile or disabled and you can't do any of these tips, the laundry washing, the dusting, the vacuuming, please consider hiring someone or asking someone for help so that you can have help reducing the dust in your home. I was just reading an article this morning for this podcast, and it comes from, let's pull it up here, the University of California, Davis, and it's the School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. They had an article that was published on August 18th of this year, 2020, and they said that influenza viruses can spread through the air on dust, fibers, and other particles in the air. And the findings have obvious implications for coronavirus transmission. So there's another thing to think about. They're not 100% sure, but this was published in the University of California, Davis, Nature Communications. So I don't know, but it's definitely something you want to consider, especially when you're stuck at home and you're worried and you're sheltering in place. You're not doing yourself any favors if your home is surrounded by dust. And my motto, just dust a little bit at a time. It's overwhelming for me to even think of, oh my gosh, I have to dust my entire house. But I dust a little area at a time. Just do your bookshelf. Just if you can't do the whole bookshelf, do a few books. You know how I roll. Dust, even if it's just a little bit at a time. It's super important right now during the pandemic that you keep yourself healthy and that you protect your immune system as best as you can. And the less dust you have in your home, the stronger your immune system will be if, God forbid, you are exposed to the coronavirus. And not only is it good for being healthy and safe right now during the pandemic, but dusting your home will improve your overall health. If you've got asthma, allergies, respiratory problems, these tips will actually help reduce those symptoms of those issues. And lastly, your home will look better if you're dusting. It's always fun to have a fresh dust and a fresh vacuum. And the room doesn't have to be completely done. You can dust and you can vacuum and still have clutter around. Just do the best that you can. Thank you so much for listening. If you are watching this on YouTube, please make sure that you're subscribed. Click that thumbs up button. Leave a comment. I love hearing from you. And thank you very much, Michael, for all of the great tips. I hope you're happy that I recorded this podcast based on your suggestion. And thanks to everybody who has responded about my podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm very excited to have some coaching calls airing coming up. And another big deal, Snappy. We are celebrating Snap's 8th birthday. Follow us on Instagram under collectorcare1 to see what we do for this guy. It'll be really fun. Until next time, collectors. And remember, happiness is a place between too little and too much.